An Airedale Terrier waited for his owner at a hospital for 2 years, not leaving until he received the heartbreaking news. Autumn in Manhattan had painted the streets in shades of amber and crimson, with a gentle breeze carrying the aroma of coffee and roasted chestnuts from Fifth Avenue streetcarts. Against the cloudy October sky, Mount Si Hospital stood tall, its windows reflecting the golden hues of the evening. At exactly 3 p.m., the sound of paws on the marble floor of the main lobby caught the attention of the staff. It was Cooper, an Airedale Terrier with brown and black fur, dignified posture, and soulful eyes, making his daily entrance with his usual determination. His fur was impeccably brushed, and the brown leather collar he wore held a silver tag that chimed softly as he walked. By now, the antiseptic smell and fluorescent corridor lights no longer fazed him. After 2 years of daily visits, the hospital had become part of his routine. Patients who roamed the corridors greeted him warmly, and a few nurses even kept biscuits in their pockets just for him. Rachel Matthews, the head nurse of the oncology department, had been observing Cooper for months. In her 15 years at the hospital, she had never encountered anything like him. Cooper would always arrive at the same time, take the same path to room 304, and sit there for precisely 2 hours, as though bound by an unbreakable promise. The usual hum of medical equipment and the occasional overhead announcements blended into the hospital's rhythm, but today Rachel noticed something unusual. Adjusting her badge on her pristine white uniform, she observed a faint hesitation in Cooper's steps, a fleeting glance in her direction. Memories surfaced, of the last patient in room 304, Sarah Thompson, whose determined blue eyes lingered even in her final moments. Rachel could still hear Sarah's whispered words, "Take care of him for me." At the time, she hadn't fully grasped their meaning. As the earlier darkness of the season crept in, shadows stretched through the corridors. Cooper held his silent vigil, his gaze fixed on the empty doorway of room 304 as though waiting for it to open. What thoughts filled his loyal heart? What memories kept bringing him back, day after day, to the same spot? Rachel felt her hands tremble slightly as she flipped through her next patient's chart. Something was shifting. She could sense it. The fluorescent lights seemed harsher, the silence heavier. Routine continued at Mount Si Hospital, punctuated by beeping monitors and faint announcements. The aroma of fresh coffee from the small cafeteria mingled with the sharp, clinical smell of the hospital, creating a familiar atmosphere for its bustling staff. Dave, the affable security guard on the afternoon shift, stood at the entrance as Cooper approached. His navy uniform contrasted sharply against the white walls, but his alert demeanor softened at the sight of the dog. "Punctual as ever," he said with a grin, offering a gentle pat that Cooper graciously accepted before continuing on. Mary Chun, the receptionist, watched with a blend of admiration and sadness. Her almond-shaped eyes, framed by thin glasses, followed Cooper with a maternal tenderness. She vividly recalled Sarah Thompson, the literature teacher who had stayed in room 304 for 6 months. Sarah had arrived each day after class with her favorite books and a radiant smile that brightened even the toughest days of treatment. "It's been exactly 2 years today since Sarah left us," Mary quietly said to Rachel as she organized some files. Her delicate, time-worn hands trembled slightly. "He hasn't missed a single day, not even during those terrible storms. Remember?" He came soaking wet, but he came. Rachel's chest tightened at the memory. Cooper, the ever-faithful terrier, had become a constant presence, a legend among the hospital staff. But today, something in his stride seemed off. His usual steady and resolute steps felt heavier, as though each one demanded extra effort. For the first time in 2 years, Cooper didn't go directly to room 304. Instead, he paused near a window overlooking the park, his gaze fixed on the golden leaves dancing in the breeze. The setting sun reflected off the hospital windows, casting an orange glow over his fur and revealing white hairs Rachel hadn't noticed before. Cooper trembled slightly, even in the hospital's warm environment. Rachel approached cautiously, her white shoes barely making a sound against the polished floor. When the terrier turned his head toward her, the look in his eyes froze her in place. She saw a pain she recognized, a deep, unyielding ache, much like what she had seen in Sarah's gaze during her final days. But Sarah's face lit up whenever Cooper entered the room. "He found me, you know," she once confided while gently stroking his ears. "After I moved here alone, he showed up at my door one day, drenched from the rain. We've never been apart since. He brought me back to life when I needed it the most." The next complication arose when Cooper suddenly stopped in the middle of a bustling sidewalk. His legs visibly trembled, drawing the attention of passing pedestrians. An elderly woman approached, concern etched on her face, but Cooper shyly retreated and pressed on, his steps increasingly labored. Rachel, following closely, observed how he leaned against buildings to steady himself, her heart sinking further with each unsteady move. 4-5 more blocks, Rachel trailed Cooper until they reached an old red brick building in the East Village. The doorman, a kind-eyed man with a graying mustache, hesitated as his gaze shifted to Rachel. "Are you a friend of Sarah's?" he asked, adjusting his navy blue cap nervously. "Cooper's been living alone in her apartment since she passed. The neighbors take turns feeding him, but he's gone all day. We can't seem to keep him in. He acts like he's got somewhere important to be." The revelation struck Rachel like a blow to the chest. For 2 long years, this faithful dog had continued his routine, clinging to the remnants of a life that was no longer there. Determined to help, Rachel convinced the doorman to let her into Sarah's apartment. What she found inside shattered her heart. The place was spotless but frozen in time. Pictures of Sarah and Cooper adorned the walls, books sat with bookmarks still in place, and a teacup rested on the dish rack, half empty. Even the calendar on the wall displayed a date from 2 years ago. Cooper slowly made his way to his bed in the corner, a red cushion worn thin, with tiny holes revealing the stuffing. His eyes, typically so alert, now seemed heavy with exhaustion. Rachel knelt beside him, her gaze drawn to small nodules she hadn't noticed before on his neck. Years of experience in oncology sent a chill through her. She recognized those signs all too well. "Oh, Cooper," she murmured, her voice trembling as tears blurred her vision. "You were there for her, keeping her memory alive. But who's taking care of you?" Cooper responded with a profound, soulful look, as if revealing the depth of his understanding. Rachel felt as though she could see into his very soul. The first major turn came when Rachel resolved to help him. She tried to take Cooper to a veterinary clinic, but the dog, mustering strength she hadn't thought possible, rose to his feet and limped toward the door. His message was unmistakable. He hadn't finished his mission. He still had to go to the hospital. Later that day, Cooper completed his usual journey to room 304, as he always did. But this time, Rachel followed him with a new understanding and a heavy heart, seeing his actions in an entirely different light. This time, Rachel saw Cooper through different eyes. His actions weren't driven by mere loyalty or routine. They were a sacred vow, a promise made to someone he cherished deeply. As the sun sank behind Manhattan's towering skyscrapers, casting the room in golden hues, Rachel came to a decision that would alter 2 lives forever. The veterinarian's diagnosis hit like a cruel reminder of the past: advanced canine lymphoma, the same cancer that had taken Sarah. Rachel fought to suppress her tears as the doctor outlined treatment options, his white coat glowing under the cold, sterile light of the office. Meanwhile, Cooper sat peacefully at her side, his wise eyes gazing out the window, as though he already understood everything. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Rachel persuaded her supervisor to let her take Cooper home, explaining that she couldn't leave him alone in his condition. Sarah's apartment, frozen in time, would finally be emptied. Each photo, bookmarked novel, and tiny memento held a story, and Rachel vowed to preserve them all in a new way. A crushing moment of defeat came when Cooper refused to eat, even the carefully cooked chicken Rachel had prepared just for him. The veterinarian's warning was clear: without proper nutrition, treatment would be even harder. Nights turned into endless vigils as Rachel camped out on the couch beside Cooper's bed, dreading every shallow breath, fearing it could be his last. The relentless ticking of the clock felt like a cruel reminder of the moments slipping away. During one of those sleepless nights, Rachel stumbled upon a pivotal discovery. While sorting through Sarah's belongings, she uncovered a blue leather-bound diary tucked among her books. Its pages were filled with Sarah's delicate handwriting, some smudged with dried tears. One entry, written just 3 months before Sarah's passing, caught Rachel's attention. "Cooper isn't just a dog. He's my guardian angel. When everyone else gave up, he stayed. When fear gripped me in the stillness of night, he was there. His silent presence comforted me more than 1,000 words ever could. There's something extraordinary about him, something beyond human understanding. He didn't just accompany me through my illness. He taught me to cherish every moment until the very end. If something happens to me, I know he'll continue his mission of love. I just hope someone will see the angel that he truly is." Tension reached its peak one difficult afternoon when Cooper suffered a severe episode. His legs gave out in the middle of the living room, and his once expressive eyes grew dull and distant. Rachel didn't hesitate. She scooped him into her arms, feeling the tremors of his weakened body against hers, and made a spur-of-the-moment decision. She would take him back to the hospital. Cooper's weight felt lighter than it should, a haunting testament to the toll of his illness and days without proper nutrition. On the way, a sudden storm swept across Manhattan. Rain poured down in torrents as Rachel sprinted through the streets, shielding Cooper with her coat. Raindrops mingled with her tears as she whispered desperate promises, assuring him that everything would be okay, even though she wasn't sure she could keep them. Thunder rumbled between the buildings, echoing like a foreboding omen. Something extraordinary occurred as soon as they entered the hospital. Cooper, who had barely been able to move just minutes before, lifted his head at the familiar surroundings. His eyes sparkled with a newfound brightness, as though the very atmosphere of the place gave him strength. Rachel couldn't fully grasp it. The hospital's sharp, antiseptic smell, unpleasant to most, seemed to invigorate Cooper. In the corridor, Dr. Anderson, a seasoned oncologist who had treated Sarah, spotted them. His lined face softened when he recognized the dog. "Some patients," he said thoughtfully, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses, "teach us more about life than about death." Sarah understood that, and it seems Cooper does too. His words carried the weight of years spent witnessing miracles and losses. That evening, Rachel broke every hospital protocol. After explaining Cooper's remarkable story, she received special permission from the administrative director to give him a temporary space. Room 304, which had been empty since Sarah's passing, welcomed a new patient. Cooper was placed on a small, makeshift bed by the window, where he had so often sat with Sarah, watching the city's endless movement. The transformation was both immediate and inexplicable. The moment Cooper settled into the room, signs of improvement began to emerge. First, he drank water. Then, he cautiously ate a little food. His previously labored breathing eased into a steady rhythm. It was as though room 304 held an unseen healing energy that resonated only with him, as though the walls still echoed with Sarah's love. Rachel stayed by his side all night, watching the city lights through the window. She couldn't help but recall how many times she had seen him sit in that same spot, gazing outside. At last, she understood. This wasn't just a routine for Cooper. It was his way of sustaining a bond that transcended understanding, a connection that, in some inexplicable way, was now saving his life. The decision to turn room 304 into Cooper's treatment space sparked a wave of emotion throughout the hospital. The staff, who had witnessed his quiet devotion over the years, rallied around him. Voluntary shifts were organized to ensure Cooper was never left alone. His story, the loyal dog who had visited the hospital daily for 2 years and now faced the same illness as his beloved owner, spread like wildfire, inspiring a chain of compassion. Marin, one of the staff, hung a small sign on the door that read, "Cooper's room, most faithful visitor." Dave, the affable security guard, began bringing him special treats during his shifts. Even patients from other floors requested visits with Cooper, finding solace and hope in his story. But the real battle wasn't with the disease. It was against time. Rachel knew the nodules were growing, and even with Dr. Anderson's experimental treatment, the odds were slim. Still, Cooper displayed resilience that defied all medical expectations. One frigid November morning, Rachel arrived to find Cooper in a different state. He sat upright in his bed, more alert than he'd been in days, his gaze fixed on the chair where Sarah had once sat. The room seemed charged with an unexplainable energy. And then the revelation came. Dr. Anderson entered, holding Cooper's latest test results. His usually stern face lit up with a smile of astonishment. "In 30 years of medicine," he said, adjusting his glasses with hands that trembled slightly, "I've never seen anything like this. The nodules, they're shrinking." The news swept through the hospital like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Doctors couldn't find a scientific explanation. Some called it a miracle. Others deemed it a medical mystery. But Rachel felt she was beginning to understand. It was as if Sarah's love, somehow preserved in that room, was offering one final act of healing. 2 weeks later, a critical moment arrived. Cooper had grown strong enough to be discharged, but Cooper showed visible anxiety whenever the idea of taking him home was mentioned. Rachel found herself torn. Part of her wanted to give him a traditional home, but she also realized that home held a very different meaning for him. One quiet afternoon, as she watched Cooper interact with a young oncology patient, her decision became clear. The dog, who had endured so much pain, was now bringing comfort to others battling similar struggles. His eyes, once dulled by illness, now sparkled with a renewed sense of purpose. Inspired, Rachel approached the hospital administration with a daring proposal to officially make Cooper a therapy dog for the oncology ward. His unique story, a dog who had fought cancer himself, coupled with his extraordinary ability to connect, made him the perfect fit for this role. The approval was unanimous. Resolving this conflict felt as natural as the first light after a long, dark night. Cooper had discovered his true purpose, transforming his story of grief into a beacon of hope for others. Room 304, once a sanctuary of memories, now became his office, a space where healing extended not just to him, but to everyone who walked through its doors. As Rachel observed Cooper comforting patients and their families with his quiet, empathetic presence, she finally grasped the full meaning of Sarah's last words. "Take care of him for me." It hadn't just been a plea for protection. It was an invitation to become part of something greater, a chain of love that grew and touched countless lives. At night, when the hospital fell silent, Cooper continued his vigil by the window in room 304. But now, his gaze no longer reflected the weight of sorrow. Instead, his eyes shone with the calm of someone who had found his true place in the world. Rachel knew Sarah would be proud. Her loyal companion had turned his deepest pain into his most extraordinary gift. 5 years have passed since that rainy afternoon when Rachel carried Cooper into the hospital. The Airedale Terrier, now sporting a few white hairs around his muzzle, has become a living legend in the halls of Mount Si. His story, recounted time and time again by patients and staff, has taken on the air of folklore. But Cooper's transformation went far beyond his own physical healing. The dog who once visited the hospital burdened by his own loss now walked its corridors with a mission: to share comfort and hope wherever it was needed. Cooper's ability to comfort others seemed almost supernatural. He always knew exactly which patient needed his presence the most, as if he could feel the weight of their anguish in the air. Room 304, once a refuge of memories, had become a haven of hope. The walls, previously bare, now showcased photos of Cooper with the patients he had helped over the years. Each picture told a story of resilience, and every smile captured was a testament to the profound healing power of unconditional love. Rachel, too, underwent a transformation. Once a nurse who viewed her patients through a strictly clinical lens, she now noticed the subtle, magical moments woven into everyday life. She came to understand that not all forms of healing can be explained by science, and sometimes the most potent medicine is simply the presence of someone who genuinely cares. One especially memorable afternoon, the hospital organized a small ceremony in Cooper's honor. He was awarded a Guardian of Hope medal, crafted just for him. During the tribute, Dr. Anderson shared a heartfelt observation that resonated deeply with everyone present. "Some people claim animals don't have souls," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. But Cooper proves otherwise. Every single day, he didn't just survive. He turned his own pain into a beacon of hope for countless people. How such profound love could spark waves of transformation that continued to ripple outward. Sarah would undoubtedly have been proud of her loyal companion, who had found a way to amplify the love she had left behind as her legacy. Even today, as Cooper makes his rounds through the hospital, he pauses briefly in front of room 304. It's a sacred ritual, a quiet acknowledgement of a bond that not only changed 2 lives but touched hundreds more. Watching from a distance, Rachel always whispers the same words with a soft smile: "Mission accomplished, Sarah." Mission accomplished. Have you ever experienced a story of unconditional love like Cooper's? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't miss the incredible journey of Rusty and Lucy in the video now appearing on your screen. It's a tale that will move you in the most special way.